Good morning, Hank. Welcome into the Blitz. How you doing, man?
Hey, good morning, Martin. I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing well. Hey, man, I thought we were going to make it into a week where we didn't have a big announcement in terms of the 2019 class, but that was taken care of on yesterday as Alabama takes, I guess, not necessarily a surprise commitment. I think the timing may have been a little bit of a surprise, but Alabama getting a commitment from four-star running back Keilan Robinson, 5'9", 184. Doesn't quite fit the mold, but tell us a little bit about this player, and should we read a little bit into the direction Loxley wants to go with this style of offense?
Yeah, I certainly think it was a little bit of a surprise considering a lot of the talk this month has been about Trey Sanders. We've talked about him a few times, the number one back in the country, former Alabama commit. But
right.
Keilan Robinson's a guy that's visited twice this spring and summer. He was on campus, I believe, June 1st and 2nd. He worked out for the staff then. Looks like clearly he earned a committable offer at that point. But I guess it's not a surprise in terms of Alabama's been looking to take 1 to 2 running backs. And the fact that Keilan Robinson is that 5'9", 184 kind of all-purpose scat back, kind of do a lot of things, can catch the ball out of the backfield, line up in the slot. So I do think as far as it's not a huge surprise considering he did impress the staff in camp. He did earn that committable offer, but I think as far as timing, it wasn't really clear as far as where he kind of stood. I think the last time we talked to him after he visited in June, he said, I didn't talk to him for long, but he answered the phone. I said, how was the visit? He said, it was all right. Didn't seem too excited about Alabama, so we didn't really follow up with him much. But I did hear at the end of May, and we reported on Bama Online that, Bama did want him. He would probably be leaning Alabama, and that looks like it ended up being the case. So nice pickup, and, yeah, I think it kind of just shows the direction, especially what they want to do under the offense, not that typical. I mean, I still think Alabama is looking to add that power kind of bruising running back like a Trey Sanders, but it also shows that they kind of want to open it up and be a little bit more versatile coming out of the backfield with this smaller type back. I know some people on Bama Online are kind of talking about kind of a Josh Jacobs comparison with him. I think Josh Jacobs is a little bit bigger, but
a lot.
So yeah.
Hank, that just shows you how big the running backs are when people think that Josh Jacobs is little. Josh Jacobs is like 15 pounds bigger than any running back I play with. He's somewhere in the 215 to 220 range, but he's considered little. That is hilarious to me. But anyway, but when you look at this young man, as I said, to me it kind of shows maybe we thought we were going to get to see it with Lane Kiffin. You remember the days of USC when they had Reggie Bush and White at the running back, Thunder and Lightning, I think is what they called him. To me, he kind of looks like that type of back that they could use, shift him out of the backfield, create some mixed matches in terms of the linebacker having to go out and cover him, et cetera. And all of his highlight film, that's what I told James earlier in the program, it was like all catching balls out of the backfield. So I think it's brilliant in terms of what he's shown as a strength because you can actually see his running ability once he catches it. So be interesting to see where else they go. Another big commitment that Nick Saban got, not necessarily for the 2019 class, but for the 2020 class. It's another 6'4", 225-pound pro-style quarterback. That makes Paul Tyson pro-style, him pro-style, and even though Talia may have a little dual threat, he's really more pro-style. And Tua is a dual threat guy, but the guy can flat out throw it from the pocket. Is Nick Saban transitioning back? Tell us a little bit about Carson Beck and his ability and plan to play both baseball and football at University of Alabama.
Yeah, I do think, especially with Dan Enos as the quarterback's coach on the staff now, we've kind of seen that trend a little bit more. But it's not just pro-style guys. I mean, every guy they're recruiting has athleticism. I mean, if you watch Carson Beck's tape, he actually has pretty limited tape. He only played in 4 games last year because he wasn't actually the full-time starter for his high school until another D1 quarterback they had at Jacksonville Providence went down with a torn ACL. But if you watch him, I mean, he is certainly a pro-style quarterback first and foremost, but he does get out of the pocket a little bit. He shows his running ability at 6'3.5", 214 pounds. So he certainly has that. I think baseball, I'm sure, helps that kind of that cross-training, multi-sport athlete dynamic he has. But yeah, June is always an interesting month because you see these guys get these offers throughout the spring. They get these kind of invites to camp, and hundreds of them show up, and you never really know who's going to see. Media's not really allowed at the camps. We have to kind of go off of what we talked about the players when parents are there, and what we see on Twitter pretty much as far as who has the best performances. So these guys show up and have good performances, get offers, and there's always these surprise commitments. And Carson Beck sounds like he was a guy that's really coveted by the staff. I actually finally spoke with him last night, and he said that he was the first quarterback or first player or quarterback, I forgot what he said, that the entire staff had agreed on that was the one guy they wanted at the position. So I thought that kind of says something about him. He had a really good camp performance. And when I asked him, because I think a lot of people are surprised with Carson Beck in that there's still other big-time 2020 quarterbacks available, like DJ Uliagale, how you say his last name, like Harrison Bailey out of Georgia. So it's kind of curious. You're kind of curious as to what's going to go on there. And Carson said that the plan was to take only one quarterback, and now we're sitting here in 2018. We don't know what the quarterback room is going to look like at Alabama come signing day, and I don't want to have theories or conspiracy theories or anything, but you just don't know. I mean, 2016, Jalen Hurts becomes starter, and they lose three quarterbacks in the fall and after that. So there's a long way to go, but Carson did say that the staff told him he was the only quarterback they wanted to take at the moment. So, yeah, I think he's a really good addition. He just doesn't have a lot of tape. We haven't seen him as a full-time starter, and I think this season when we do, he'll really have a chance to shine, and I think he'll put up some pretty good numbers.
Yeah, and the kid was actually committed to play baseball for Florida and not football, so switch schools and sports all in one decision. Speaking with Hank, South 247 Sports, Bama Online Recruiting, let's bring in Pat. Pat, you're in with Hank. What you got for him?
Good morning, fellas. Hey, I wanted to get Hank to compare Waddell, Keilan Robinson, and Slade Bolton, because we already have two extremely good all-purpose backs, unless he thinks Slade is actually going to wind up playing safety at Alabama. I want to listen to what he has to say on that, please.
Compare Slade and who?
Compare Slade Bolton, Keilan Robinson, who we just picked up,
right,
and also Waddell, who's coming in as basically a slot receiver, all-purpose back / kick returner.
All right. Go ahead, Hank.
Yeah, I think all those guys are pretty similar. I mean, you look at Slade Bolden and Jalen Waddell, and they're both recruited as slot receivers. We saw Slade Bolden obviously play secondary a lot in the spring. I think that was partially because of lack of numbers there at the same time. But who knows? Maybe Slade Bolden is kind of like a do-it-all guy. I mean, you look at him, and he can really. He played quarterback in high school. He was recruited as a slot receiver. You can play running back. You can play secondary. So I think in terms of Slade Bolden, I think he's more of a guy that can really use all over the field. I think Kealing Robinson is a guy that's going to be used solely for offense, whether it's running but lining up in the backfield or lining up in the slot. I think he has more dynamic ability out of the offense. And same thing with Jalen Waddle. I don't see Waddle really lining up as a running back, although, he could. He's kind of – we saw Nick Saban talk about Jalen Waddle after signing day, and I don't think I've ever heard Nick Saban talk so highly of a guy that hasn't played for them yet. I mean, the things he said about him, he was just saying tremendous athletic ability. I think Waddle's probably the best one out of that group, clearly, at this point. I think Kealing Robinson's still developing, and we don't really know yet with Slade Bolden kind of where he's going to be, but he certainly had a great high school career too. But I think we'll certainly see Kealing Robinson more used out of the backfield, and Slade Bolden kind of. I'm not sure what we're going to see out of Slade Bolden. I think we could see anything. So similar players, but obviously I think they'll be used in different ways in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, that's my thought.
Thank you, fellas. A wonderful answer there on that guy. And I'm on a 3-week cruise, and hell, I'm in port. We're broken down with a generator in Carabel, Florida.
All right.
Anyway, hey, y'all have a blessed day, and hey, I hope and pray I make it back so I can talk to y'all some more. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks, Pat. Have a good one. All right. Hey, yeah, Hank, I agree with you. I don't think this running back decision in any way impacts any plans they have for Waddle. And my concern with Slade Bolton is he don't get lost. They moved him over, but I think that was strictly a numbers thing in terms of the defense. But they are going to have a lot of young weapons on offense. And a lot of those, to me, Edelman, Welker type of players, and what's his name? Of course, Waddle being a guy who seems to not just be that type of player, but an elite athlete on top of it. So, hey, as we move forward, we had the Champions Cookout, the end of the early recruiting period, I guess, in some ways into dead period now. How did they do during the early period? Because it's obvious what a difference a year makes. But how was this past weekend? Any news coming out from the Champions Cookout?
Yeah, I think the weekend was a huge success for Alabama. Obviously, we didn't see a slew of commitments, but I do think they probably gained a lot of ground for a lot of their top targets. Carson Beck committed, but he wasn't the guy we were really looking at prior to the weekend, thinking he was going to pop. But big-time targets on campus, and I think the two most notable ones were Fatui Tuatele, the 5-star defensive tackle from Hawaii, and Keilan Thibodeau, the number 1 player in the country from California. Bama got both of those guys back on campus for the second time, each of them since April, on their own dime, which is significant in itself. And had them on campus all weekend. Fatui Tuatele worked out on Saturday. Keilan Thibodeau, I was told, did not work out, but I think the staff has seen enough from him to where he has the ability to commit whenever he wants. Fatui Tuatele, I believe, I was told there's mixed reviews on how he worked out, but I was told he was going up against all the best offensive linemen, which obviously includes Clay Webb and guys like Pierce Quick and Amari Cotton and all those guys. So we'll see kind of where he stands. I still think he's very highly regarded by Alabama staff, and certainly a big priority need at defensive line to close out the 2019 class. But other than that, I think Bama took a step forward with both those guys. Both will be back for official visits. Clay Webb, obviously, back on campus for the second time this month. I know everyone saw those pictures on Twitter with him and all the Alabama commits, and I was told he looked very comfortable with the Alabama commits. It looked like he was part of the group. So I think Bama's still in good shape with Clay Webb, the number 1 player in the state. Beyond that, they had several other top targets on campus. There was actually some surprise visits, too. We saw Tyreek Stevenson, who's arguably the best defensive back in the class, from South Florida, another one of these South Florida phenom guys. He made it up to campus for like the 3rd or 4th time in his recruitment. And he said when he talked to Nick Saban, Saban told him that he is one of the highest graded high school defensive backs he's ever evaluated. So that says something about him.
What was this kid's name?
His name is Tyreek Stevenson. And he's from Miami. And I think this is one of those recruitments where, we saw last year with Tyson Campbell, nobody was talking about Georgia. Nobody's really talking about Alabama yet with Tyson. Well, sort of with Tyson Campbell. He ends up signing with Georgia, and then obviously Patrick Surtain was a lock to LSU at this point last summer. He ends up with Alabama. So, it's really early to write anybody off, and the fact that he's visiting and giving Alabama a look, I think is significant. So he's a guy to watch, and then certainly we can go on and on. There was certainly a number of top targets on campus, but I think to have that event right before the dead period, get those guys on campus for one last look before they can't see Alabama again for a month was big, and I think we'll see some momentum continue out of that weekend to kind of fill out July and when it gets slow here in a couple weeks.
All right. Speaking with Hank South 247 Sports, one last question, actually combo question for you. Who was the guy you said that had a committable offer? And number 2, I see that you have a story up about Ishmael Sopsher, talking about that Nick Saban said he could change the class. Kind of where does Alabama stand with him, the number one defensive lineman in the country this year? And who did you say had that committable offer? Could commit at any time.
Oh, Kayvon Thibodeau.
Okay,
I mean,
the number one player in the country.
Number one player in the country.
Okay.
I think he has. Yeah. I mean, Alabama's seen that. There's some guys. Most guys have to go camp, see Nick Saban, let him pass the eye test. There's some guys that have done enough of that with their film and kind of what the staff has seen already. So he's certainly one of those guys.
Okay.
And then
your article.
Ishmael Sopsher. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that you had the article up and just tell the listeners how they can get to that because that's some great content. Nick Saban saying this kid could change the class.
Yeah, Ishmael Sopsher, the number one defensive tackle in the country. He doesn't say too much when we talk to him, but he caught up with one of our LSU writers a couple days ago. He said that, I mean, as far as where Alabama stands, I think Bama is in great shape for Ishmael Sopsher. I don't think he's like a locked Alabama or anything, but I think compared to where they were this time last year to where they are now, I think they're one of the top contenders for him. And certainly we know the success they've had in Louisiana with Devontae Smith, in that area with Shaheem Carter. And, yeah, he said the last time he talked to Nick Saban, Saban told him he could change the Alabama, he could change the 2019 class for them. So that's pretty high praise from the Alabama head coach. So we'll see what happens. He's a long way from making a decision. I think he's putting out a top 5 on July 30th. I would be very surprised if Alabama was not in that. And then he's making a decision in February. So there's business to come. I would anticipate him back on campus a couple more times, if not more than that, prior to announcing. And I think this is one Bama is in good shape for right now.
All right. That is Hank South 247. You can find his articles at Hank South 247. That's where he tweets out his articles. Hank, thanks for being with us this morning, and we'll catch up with you next week, and have a great day.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Marvin.